Welcome back to Project U 2.2. I'm Carrie, and today we are examining the topic of why we stay stuck and how to break free from our invisible prisons. Sometimes it's not real bars that are keeping us trapped, but it's beliefs that we build in our lives. After reading a book from my last book club, I've been thinking a lot about captivity and both kinds, the kind that is visible and the kind that lives quietly inside of us, the kind that comes from trauma or fear, but then also the kind that grows out of habit, guilt, or even comfort. You have probably heard stories of people who were kidnapped and held for years against their will, even decades. J.C. Dugard, Elizabeth Smart. Both of those girls endured unimaginable things. And miraculously, they both found freedom. What fascinates me the most isn't just that the girls escaped, but it's what happened after. Both said that once they were free, they had to learn how to live again. They had to retrain their minds to believe that they were truly safe and that they could choose and that life could be more than just survival. And it just really makes me think about how this is true for all of us. We may not be locked in a room or held against our own will, but many of us are living smaller than we're meant to. Maybe you are trapped in a job or a relationship or some beliefs or identities that keep you from becoming who you're meant to be. So today I want to talk about those invisible prisons where we are and why we stay there, how to recognize it, and what it really takes to open the door and walk out. It's hard to imagine the story of J.C. Dugard, who was rescued after 18 years. And she said she didn't try to run because she didn't believe she could survive outside her captor's control. That's not weakness. It is conditioning, and psychologists call it learned helplessness. When you have experienced so much fear, shame, or failure, your brain will start believing that escape isn't possible even when it is. And that might sound extreme to us, but it's what so many of us do every single day. We get stuck in the sameness of our lives, the patterns, the pain, this is just how it is thinking. And we stop believing that we could have even more. And it's not that we don't want freedom or that we don't want more. We just forget what it feels like. Think about Elizabeth Smart. She was kidnapped at 14 years old, held for 9 months before being rescued. Later, when she was interviewed, she shared that fear and manipulation were so powerful that she didn't believe escape was even an option, even when she was out in public sometimes. That's the power of psychological captivity. And our stories may not look like hers, but the patterns are the same. Fear convinces us that we can't change. Shame tells us that we don't deserve better. And then you have that little voice of your comfort zone whispering that it's safer to just stay the same. So slowly we adapt to our own captivity. We don't realize how often we live this out. And it's not just people who are held in captivity that are trapped. It's all of us in different ways. When we stay in a job that pays the bills, but it's suffocating us from our true purpose and it steals our joy. And while we might tell ourselves that we're lucky to have the job and we're lucky for the stability, that could be true, but somewhere along the line we trade meaning for maintenance and we start surviving instead of living. We stay in marriages or friendships that may have turned into emotional prisons, places where we shrink or silence ourselves or settle because it feels safer and less scary than starting over. Sometimes we're not ready to walk away, and that's okay. I'm not saying we have to run from every situation that doesn't feel joyful. because running can become its own form of captivity. But what I am saying is that we can do the inner work to change these spaces so they do bring us joy again. We can show up differently. We can have those hard conversations. We can set boundaries that honor ourselves and others. Because when we take time to do that inner work, our outer world begins to shift too. Then if you look at your habits, they sometimes are ones that we hold on to because they help us cope. We stay in unhealthy patterns, whatever your unhealthy patterns may be, because sometimes they numb us enough to help us survive. And they keep us comfortable enough to not feel the full weight of our pain. But they also keep us too numb to feel real joy. And so when we finally start to take steps forward to heal, to grow, to change, life sometimes throws hard things at us. And guess what we do? We let fear pull us right back to where we were. And it's not that we're lazy or weak, but it's our brains craving what's familiar instead of what's healthy. So every time we choose awareness over autopilot, or every time we decide to really wake up to our own life, that's choosing freedom. Sometimes what keeps us stuck isn't fear, but true grief. When we lose someone we love, a child, a parent, a partner, it can feel wrong to move forward, like somehow living again means leaving them behind. And I've seen this in people I've coached, that guilt of smiling again, the hesitation to make plans, or the voice that's telling them, if I move on, I'm betraying their memory. Staying stuck does not honor the person that we lost. What truly honors them is living fully. Because when you choose to keep living, you don't choose the love or the memories. You carry them forward with you into new moments of light. And that's what transformation looks like. Not forgetting, but integrating. One of my book club books that I just finished was called The Marsh King's Daughter. And one scene in there really stuck out to me. It's about this mother who's been held captive for years, and she stays because she's too afraid to risk her child's safety. Her daughter was born in captivity and doesn't even know that she's a prisoner. And it's interesting to me because I think that that's how it is in our own lives so often. We just get used to the way things are that we stop noticing the bars and we don't even realize we're a prisoner to our circumstances. And one day we wake up realizing that we've stopped dreaming. Sometimes the scariest part of freedom is that it demands a new version of us, one who's brave enough to live without the limits that we've known. And freedom isn't a one-time moment. It's not just quitting the job, leaving the relationship, or losing the weight. It's what happens after, when you learn how to stay free. And that's what both J.C. Dugard and Elizabeth Smart had to do. They had to rebuild an identity that wasn't defined by survival. And that's exactly what we must do in our own ways. Freedom doesn't look like breaking chains or walking away. Sometimes freedom is quiet. It is internal. It's choosing yourself again after years of forgetting how. Freedom is saying, I deserve peace, then building a life that aligns with it, one step at a time. That might mean leaving the job that's draining you, or speaking truth in a relationship where silence has become a habit. Freedom might mean forgiving yourself for staying too long, for not knowing better, or for doing what you had to do to survive. And healing doesn't start with big, bold moves. It starts with small, honest ones, like saying no without feeling guilty, taking a minute to breathe before reacting, or asking yourself what freedom might look like for you today. And if you ask yourself that question enough, you'll start to feel the answer rise in your gut, in your choices, and eventually into your reality. Because freedom is not about escaping your life, it's about reclaiming it. Freedom begins when you stop making choices from fear and start making them from faith, even shaky, uncertain faith. It begins with one step, one decision, one brave choice to believe in something more than your past. So I want to leave you with a few questions to think about. Where are you living smaller than you're meant to? What pain or loss are you afraid to release because it feels like you're letting go of love instead of carrying it forward as a light and not letting that hold you back like a weight? What would freedom look like for you, not in theory, but in your real, messy, beautiful life? Your captivity might not have locks or chains, but you'll know you're in it if you hear your soul whispering, there's more than this. And then that other kind of captivity that's harder to see, the kind born from grief. When we lose someone we love through death, divorce, or even the loss of who we used to be, part of us stops moving. Sometimes we confuse staying stuck with staying loyal. We say to ourselves that if we move forward, it's like we're forgetting them. Or if I start to feel joy again, it means I didn't love them enough. But that is not true. Grief is not a debt that we owe the past. Grief is a reminder of how deeply we loved and how capable we are of love still. Think of people like Elizabeth Smart, who was kidnapped as a teenager, held in unimaginable captivity, and yet she found the courage to reclaim her story. She said something once that stuck with me. She said, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you live afterward. And that's what this is about. Some of us may not be in physical captivity, but we are emotionally bound by the guilt, fear, or loss. And it's time to start loosening those ties. Because moving on doesn't mean moving away from someone you loved. It means carrying their memory with you into your next chapter. And I really love this quote. Letting their love become the light that leads you forward, not the weight that keeps you behind. Staying stuck does not honor their memory. Living fully does. If this episode hit home for you, if you saw yourself in these stories, I want you to know something. You're not broken for being stuck. You're human, and you have the power to walk out of that cage that no longer fits who you are becoming. Freedom isn't found in one giant leap. It is built in small, brave moments. Moments when you say no more, and moments when you choose to rise again, because you deserve a life that feels like freedom and not survival. This is your moment to stop settling and to start living. This is Project U 2.2. Thank you for listening and for choosing to grow.